Okay, everybody, this is the last video for the assignment. Originally, I had imagined that I would talk about formulas and functions a little bit, but I decided to just cut that content. I'm going to come back to that in a future assignment. Right now, I just want to show you just two more little productivity tips. Certainly, the filters that we looked at in the last video are super powerful. You can do a lot with those. And to just recap briefly, if I had a bunch of data that I needed to clean up, I would probably select all the columns, turn on filters, and I would probably sort each column one at a time. And I would hope that the most of the problematic data would be either at the beginning or the end of the sort. That doesn't clean up all the problems, but it does help you find a lot of the problems if you have a bunch of data that you have to clean up manually and you don't have any sort of automation to help you do it. Okay, I'm going to go back to my workspace now. And I'm going to go back to my fake school data folder. And I'm going to, in this video, I'm going to look at that CSV file. It's called fakestudentdata.csv. And I'm going to open that up. And as previously noted, we're going to see that this does not have a nice layout. And I'm going to show you what I would do to fix that. Excel is opening up. There it is. And I'm gonna just zoom in for a second because I want you to see what I'm about to do. So I'm gonna just make use of this accessibility feature here and zoom in. There we go. And here I am at the tippy top of my column here. So this is cell A1, and watch how my mouse pointer changes. Here it's an arrow. Here it's a little cross. And when my mouse pointer gets over that little line between A and B, it changes to a different kind of cross. It's a black cross with an arrow that points to the left and an arrow that points to the right. And it turns out that little icon is really, really powerful. I'm going to zoom out and show you what I mean by that in just a second. There we go. I'm back to normal. Great. That was just me zooming around. Watch. You say, well, I need to quickly make all this data fit because column C looks to be too small, and and column B is too small. How do I make all the data fit? Well, you click on column A, and I'm holding my mouse button down, and I'm just scrolling off to the right, and I'm really highlighting more columns than I really need. And when my mouse pointer, I hover over one of those lines, and my mouse pointer changes to that special cross with an arrow, and I tap on that twice, what I get is an automatic adjustment of the column widths. And look at that, student ID is now readable, email address is now readable, and it just fixed all that up for me very nicely. Okay, so that's a nice little tip. If I wanted to keep these column widths, I would have to do a file and save as, and then I would have to save this file as a Excel workbook instead of a CSV file. I'm not actually going to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm going to go back. But that's if I wanted to keep my formatting, I have to save it in the Excel workbook format. Okay. What I want to show you now is something that I do all the time whenever I'm cleaning up data. I'm going to add a couple columns, and I'm going to fix this column up right here. I've been given student names in a column called full name, and what I really wanted was a last name and a first name in separate columns. If you can imagine, why would you want that? Well, sometimes I want to address, maybe I might want to do a mail merge or something like that, and I might want to reference the person and address the person by their first name, or maybe use just their last name. How can I do that? I can do that by, I'm going to click on column C here. That's easy enough, right? And I'm going to right mouse click, and I'm going to choose insert. And what that'll do is it'll create a brand new column. And personally, I think it's a good idea to make a couple extra new columns just to make sure everything's okay. So I've got a couple extra new columns there. I've made some space in between this column and the rest of the data. Now watch what I do. I'm going to click on column B and I'm going to go up to data. Remember I said most of your work can be done with home and data, and there is an option over here called text to columns, which will let me split column B into 2 or more columns. Let me tap on that and it gives me this sort of little wizard that lets me choose how I would like to do this. And I'm going to choose delimited because the comma is what delimits or specifies the boundary between the last name and the first name. So I'm going to choose delimited and next, and I'm going to choose comma, and I'm going to hit finish. There. So what I've done here is I've converted this into 2 columns. I do have a little bit of a problem because there's a space in the front of everything. But if I were to go back over here and hit text to columns again, and this time I'm going to choose fixed width and next. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'm demonstrating both techniques now, and I'm also cleaning this data up all in one demonstration. So I'm going to click my mouse here, and what that's going to do is it's going to split column C into 2 columns. You're going to have a column of just empty spaces, and then the rest of the data. That's fine. So now there, that's all cleaned up. So what I would do is I would, of course, give this a better column heading. I would call this last name, and I would call this one first name. And then I would click on column C. I would right mouse click and delete that column. And I get rid of this column as well. And then I would hit save. So now I've split that into 2 columns. This text to columns wizard is super powerful, and it helps you clean up data that might come to you in some undesired format. Let's say I wanted to create a column that had just the usernames in it, right? I'm going to show you 2 different ways I could do that. One way to do that would be to click on column E. I'm going to right mouse click, copy, column F, paste, right? And then I could tap. I'm going to split that new column into 2 columns, and I'm going to use delimited, and I'm going to use the @ sign as the delimiter. There's no rule that says it has to be a tab or a comma or a space. I could just say @ sign and finish. And then I would call this then like user name, and then I would just get rid of this column here. And I just realized why sometimes I have a hard time selecting things. It has everything to do with where my little image here is of me talking. So there you go. I fixed all that up. Now it's beautiful. Okay. So that was one way. That was one way for me to transform this column here into just a new username. I'm going to hit undo a couple of times, and I'm going to do this another way, and I'm going to do this using I'm going to do this using flash fill. All right, so let me hit undo, 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 undo. There we go. I'm back to the beginning, and I'm going to hit escape, so I'm not highlighting anything anymore, and I'm going to say username. And one thing you can do that Excel does is very clever is you can, I'm going to type in this box. I'm going to type in it, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm typing. I'm going to type in this box. I'm going to type the thing I want, which is just the username. So watch me do that. That would be, what was it? JS 1291. 9. And as you know, this is all completely imaginary data. And then I'm going to do the next one by way of example, which was BJ, oops, let's do that again. BJ 98024, and you can see that Excel is actually already anticipating what it is I'm about to do. But if I go onto so I have these two examples, and I go to the cell below. Now I'm gonna use the keyboard now. Okay, so with this finger we're gonna hold down the Control key, and with this finger I'm gonna hold down the E key, Control E. Look at that. That was called flash fill. And what Excel did is it recognized the pattern. It looked at this line, it looked at this line and said, oh, I see what you want. You want to take out everything to the, to the left of the @ sign. And it just completed that for me for all these records. And there's 100 students here, and I didn't have to type that over and over again. I didn't have to write a formula. I didn't have to do anything. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to make another column I'm going to call it full name, and I'm going to use that to put together, instead of Smith, Jessica, I'm going to have this be Jessica Smith. All right, so I'm going to make this just a little bit wider. Okay, and I'm going to say Jessica Smith, and I'm going to go down to the next one, and it's Barbara Johnson. And you can see that it's already anticipating my next move. I'm in the empty space down below, Control E, bang. It did it. That's not a formula. That's just a little bit of artificial intelligence baked into Excel. Now, if you've watched this long, this is the longest video in the assignment. It's also the last one. I want to give you a value add. There's an open-ended question at the end of the assignment where I say something like, does the flash fill feature of Excel count as a form of artificial intelligence? It does. It does. I'm giving you the answer because you watched the whole video. You can pat yourself on the back and say, good job. Let me speculate for a minute how I think that's working. Of course, flash fill is a proprietary bit of software. It's a proprietary algorithm owned by Microsoft. They don't document how it works. But what I think is probably going on here in Excel, and I'm going to do undo for a second, is when I hit Control E here, the first thing it does is it looks at the line above, at the cell above, and it probably does some sort of association between this piece of text and all the other text in the row, right? And I think there's probably a short list. There's probably a short list of common patterns, things like phone numbers and zip codes and email addresses, things that people are going to have the most common. And then it starts, if it doesn't find a match there, it starts to look for other patterns in the data. And it will do that for this guy here, and it will do that for the row above that until it runs out of data. Okay, it probably is smart enough to ignore what appears to be the header row. So it looks for a pattern here, it looks for a pattern here, and there are whole computer languages dedicated to representing regular expressions. It's literally called regex. So it does some sort of regex to determine is, okay, what's the pattern here? What's the pattern here? And if it finds it might speculate like the top 10 regex, and then it will do a test and say which of the two regexes is the best, is the best fit. And once that heuristic or that algorithm picks the best one, it says, all right, man, I'm going to just do that all the way down to the end of the data set. And it's actually, again, Excel is actually, quote unquote, smart enough to know that my data set probably ends down. I'm going to hit the down arrow, Control, and my data set probably ends down here because this is a completely blank row beneath. So that's probably the end of my data set. So all of that counts as a form of AI. It's not a large language model or a neural network or deep learning or anything like that, but it does give the illusion of intelligence. And that's what AI in the broadest sense of the term is all about. All right, we're just at 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. Have a good one, people. See you later.